Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of my massive book wrap-up. So if you haven't seen the first video, you can watch it after this. It's not that important to watch them in chronological order, but I was absent from doing book wrap-ups and just book videos or videos in general for a very long time. The last wrap-up I posted was a June and July wrap-up, so I had a lot of books that I needed to go over, and I love talking about books, so I really wanted to be able to talk about these in a video. So I'm not gonna let this intro be too long, but if you want to see what I'm up to on a day-to-day basis, Twitter and Instagram are the best place to do that. It's just at Kendra Cus on both platforms, and then I do have a bookstagram at Kendra Cus Reads, which I need to post on more. Okay, but without further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into it. So this is wrapping up August, September, October, November. In the first video, I basically did most of August and September. There was one book that I read at the end of September that I'm just including in this video because it was part of a series and I just want them to be in the same video, obviously, to be a little more pleasing to the eye as well as the ear. I don't know. So I did this in my last video. I'm not sure, honestly, it's been a long time since I've read these books, so I'm going through my Goodreads reviews here, and that is how I'm doing this. The first book on the list, I was very excited to get into this book, and that is Aurora Rising by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I have never read the other series they did together, which I think is the Illuminate Files. I have the first book. I've had it for over a year, never read it. If you've watched my last video, you know that I've been getting into sci-fi, and I really wanted to read this book because I've heard a lot of good things about this book. I've heard it's really exciting and really fun, and I had heard that it was like found family, which I love, and that it kind of felt like a less edgy space version of Six of Crows, which I would have to agree with. It's a lot less edgy. Like Six of Crows is really dark and gritty, and this doesn't really have that same dark gritty vibes, but it does have a lot of similar themes, I guess you could say. On our cover here, we have Aurora, or they call her Ari, or Ori, or however you pronounce it. I kind of just said Ari, but yeah. So the premise of this story is there is this like massive space station, if I remember correctly, and kids go there to train to be like certain positions within, I don't even know how you call it, like within a ship. So like there's the pilot, and there's a bunch of other people in the ship, and they go there and they train and they pick their positions, and at the like towards the end of their schooling they join together as like I forget what it's called. Basically, I mean, a group. I mean, they're supposed to be together for missions and stuff like that. And so our pilot one day goes off in this small little mission, finds her kind of like literally floating around in this spaceship, and she was supposed to be with 100 or 1,000 other members of her like cryo sleep group, and none of them were there, and he saves her, brings her back, and then now she's part of the team essentially. As you can see, there's a little spark in her eye. She starts to learn that she has some powers. Just one of the things I love so much about this book was there was so much diversity between every single character. I don't think this was a perfect book. I think I gave it 3.75 stars, which I don't really have too much to complain about. It didn't wow me, but I was obsessed with the diversity between each character. My favorite characters were Ari and Cal is like a different species, and he's basically kind of like Legolas, not in personality wise, but that's kind of how he looks. White blonde hair, braids in his hair, pointy ears, Legolas. I'm here for that. But I really thoroughly enjoyed this, and I tabbed it, and it was a lot of fun, and I don't really know what else to say. I definitely recommend this. I can't like say that like, oh, you're gonna be obsessed with it, but if you like sci-fi, I think you'll thoroughly enjoy it, because even though I gave it a 3.75 stars, I was like thoroughly enjoying it the entire time. Does that make sense? The next book on the list is Aurora Burning by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. Obviously, I picked this up. One of the reasons I wanted to pick up this series, because like I had mild interest in it when I saw the first book when it came out last year, but this cover is stunning. Like, I don't know, there's something about this cover that was so eye-catching, and I remember going into Barnes & Noble after the Barnes & Noble started to open up again after like quarantine and stuff, like back in I don't remember if it was May or June. And I remember seeing this on the shelf and just being like, this is stunning. Like, I love this book cover. Anyway, I gave this book 4 stars. This did not disappoint me at all. There were like, I kind of had some of the same feelings about the first book where like I wasn't obsessed with it, but I also wasn't disappointed, so that's why it's a 4-star for me. There was no middle book slump. Like, you know, some series suffer from that middle book slump. I did not feel that happened with this at all. I will say there are parts of the book that are slower than others, but once you get to, if I remember correctly, like, I didn't write it down in my review, and I don't know why, but I think once you get to like the 60% mark or the 70% mark, it's super fast paced again. There is a potential redemption arc for an evil character, which I am so here for. There's a potential like enemies to lovers romance that is budding in this book. You get a lot of Cal and Ori romance. Oh, I love it. Loved it so much, and I'm really excited. I also tapped this. I'm really excited to see what the next book has to offer. I love these kids. I love the found family. Great stuff. The next 2 books on my list are also part of a series, and it is Well Met and Well Played. I did not tab these because I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about them, and honestly, like, I don't always tab romance unless I feel like it's a fantasy romance, because sometimes, you know, when sequels come out, the fantasy aspect, you need to remember certain things, whereas with these, they are part of a series, but it's different people in each series. So the first one I gave a 4 stars, and I really loved this. I am extremely picky with my reviews, so I know some people may be like, well, you really loved it, but he gave it 4 stars. And yeah, okay, I don't know what else to say except for the fact that I'm extremely picky. This is about a girl who moves back to her hometown to help her sister. Her sister got in a car accident and can't really walk. She has like, I think she broke like both of her legs. And so she comes back to help her sister and her sister's daughter. I think her main character is like 24, and her sister was like 12 years older than her, so her sister has a 16-year-old daughter who's in high school. So that's kind of the premise of the book. She takes her niece to go sign on like a Saturday to sign up for the Renaissance Fair, and she ends up getting roped in for the Renaissance Fair, and just lots of trouble ensues from there. The reason I loved this book was because it took, a majority of it took place in the Renaissance Fair or practicing for the Renaissance Fair. And so because of that, it added this like level of magic to the book, this level of fantasy, like this aspect of fantasy, even though it was obviously, there was no fantastical, no magic, no nothing like that. But because it took place in the Renaissance Fair and they were playing these characters while they fell in love, like it felt so magical. I adore Simon. Our love interest name is Simon. He's kind of just this like scrawny little nerdy dude, but he is, I loved him so much. I think that's one of the reasons I was super in love with this book. She plays like a barmaid wench, and he plays a pirate, which is, he has to exude this character that is opposite from his normal, more introverted, more shy life. And this pirate character is really outgoing, really cocky, kind of like goes up and says what it is, or like kisses a woman, I don't know, lots of things. Really great story. I loved it so much. I highly recommend this, and the smut was great. It was really cute. I loved it. And then the second book is Well Played, and like I can kind of talk more about this because it doesn't really give away, I mean, obviously it's a romance book, so you know they're gonna end up together in the end. So you do get some aspects of, I think her name is Emily? Yeah, Emily and Simon. You do get some aspects of Emily and Simon in the second book, but it takes place with one of the friends. I forgot her name, Stacy. Her name is Stacy, and the guy's name is Dex? No, it's Daniel. The other dude's name is Dex. I'm pretty sure his name is Daniel. Daniel, yeah, it's Daniel. Okay, so this disappointed me. I gave this 3 stars, and honestly, it could be a 2.5 star because I did mildly enjoy certain parts of it, but for the most part, I was underwhelmed and honestly a little turned off by certain things, which I'll get into without giving away spoilers. So this is a catfishing book, literally. Like, that is the basis of the plot. She has a summer fling with this guy named Dex, who's this really hot dude who wears a kilt, and they play in a Scottish band at the Renaissance Fair. She thinks she's messaging him the whole time, but she's really messaging Daniel. And then when the next summer comes back, something like, I think he finally tells her or something, and it's just weird. It's just a weird basis to a romance. This catfishing, I really did not like that aspect of the book, and I really didn't care for their chemistry. I didn't feel like they had a lot of chemistry, and I did not care at all for Daniel. And that is the biggest problem. Like in a romance book, I can put certain things aside, but I have to actually like feel for the love interest usually, because that's what keeps me attached. And if I did not feel for the love interest, I'm not gonna feel for the book. So I do think other people would like this, but because it is like based off of catfishing, I can't in good conscience like truly recommend it because I feel like it's weird. That being said, the third book I believe is going to be about Emily's older sister and another character called Mitch, who we have met in the series already, and I am excited for that. It'll come out next year and I'm sure I'll enjoy it more because it probably won't have a catfishing plot. So yeah, that's all I have to say about those. The next book I read was, let me just tell you, this was one of the biggest blessings of the year to receive this arc. It is Actor Age Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert, and receiving this arc was a magical moment in my 2020. And my 2020, just as everyone else's 2020s, has been a rather low moment in life. So receiving this was a great thing. From the second I picked up this book, I knew I was gonna love it. Like after the first 2 chapters, I was like, this is gonna be incredible. I give this 4.75 stars. I know that seems really picky, and I'll get into it later, but the premise of this book is we have the third and final Brown sister, Eve, who struggles with acting like an adult per se. She doesn't hold a job, she loses interest in certain things really quickly, and it's really weighing on her relationship with her parents and her friends. And something happens and it causes her to kind of take a drive, if I remember correctly, and then she stumbles upon this bed and breakfast and it says help wanted, and she goes up there and she ends up very unconventionally getting the job of the chef of the bed and breakfast, which I thought was a really cool aspect because who doesn't love a little bed and breakfast romance? I mean, I don't know. It really pulled me in, that aspect of it. Let me just start off by saying before I get into anything that this has autism rep, and I personally don't have anyone with autism in my direct family, but in my extended family, I have quite a few members. In the family I married into, I have quite a few extended family members who have certain levels of autism, and so I don't know too much about autism, but I will say as a reader who doesn't know too much, I feel like it was done in a very, 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 very beautiful and sacred and like just all around very elegant way of describing. I mean, elegant makes it sound fake, but I shouldn't have said that word per se, but do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like it was very respectfully done. So somebody, if anyone disagrees, I guess this book isn't even coming out till next year, but if anyone has read it who's watching this video and you feel the same way, or if you have differing opinions, let me know. But I do feel like it was done pretty well. Talia Hibbert just adds such a magical feeling into her books, which is so interesting because they're contemporary romance, they're real life situations, they have nothing to do with fantastical or magical things, but she makes them feel utterly magical. It's just her writing style. It is so splendid. From the very beginning, Jacob and Eve's chemistry is just sizzling off the charts. It's definitely like an enemies to lovers, like a hate to love romance kind of thing, and I just think that adds just the best dynamic. I don't know anyone in this world who doesn't love an enemies to lovers or hate to love, so I mean, I don't know. Obviously, without saying anything or giving anything away, one of my favorite things that Talia Hibbert does as a writer is she creates brilliant third act conflicts that don't take away from all of the progression that the characters had in the story. I think that is a very bad problem with romance books in general, because typically their third act conflict involves the couple rather than just one or the other person, and sometimes they can retract all the progression that the couple or the individuals made throughout the story. But Talia Hibbert really writes these beautiful third act conflicts that feel very true to the nature of the feel very true to the nature of the book without taking away any of the things we learned or the things they learned. She just truly is a magician when it comes to creating third act conflicts, and this one is the same as the other two, where it's really, really, really well done. Honestly, in my review, I didn't put why I only gave it 4.75 stars. I remember there genuinely was something about it that kind of was like, okay, well, this isn't a 5-star book for me. And when it comes to the romance genre in particular, I am extremely picky with what I give 5 stars. I kind of live off of a philosophy when it comes to rating my books where I only want to give something 5 stars if I feel like it was my version of perfect. I don't mean perfect in general, I just mean my version of perfect. And so that is, I feel like it's just, I'm just extra picky when it comes to romance. So yeah, all in all, if you haven't read that series yet, if you haven't dipped your toes into the Brown sisters world, where have you been? Why aren't you reading them? Read them right now and get prepared for Act Your Age, Eve Brown when it comes out next year. Did hit a little bit of a slump, and it wasn't like a slump, I just like, I don't know, I don't know what happened. But the next thing I read was Cinder by Marissa Meyer. My sister-in-law really loves this book and this series in general. And I remember when they released these covers this year that I was instantly attracted because I think this art is stunning. I'm not saying a lot because pink is not my, I'm like not attracted to pink typically. It's just not my color. I don't love it. I mean, as you can probably tell, I love black and green and gold, and that's about it. I mainly just love dark colors, but mostly black and green and red. Love me some red. But this art is stunning. I think it's gorgeous. And then you get like you also get some art in the book in the dust in the front, like the open flap or whatever. I don't know what it's called. I think in the romance books have it a lot, and I think it's called a step back. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, if you don't know anything about this series, it's like a dystopian sci-fi retellings of classic fairy tales. So in this story, we obviously are having a take on Cinderella, and our main character, kind of like Cinderella, lives with her stepsisters and her stepmother, except for they're not really, actually they're not step. It's her adoptive mother and her adoptive sisters. And one of them's really mean and one of them's really nice and kind of like her secret best friend, but she's kind of her best friend in secret because if her mom and her other sister know she loves Cinder, like it would just, I don't know. Anyway, I gave this 4 stars. I personally didn't really connect with any of the characters. I don't think any of them were bad. I just personally didn't connect with any of the characters, and I think that's why it only got 4 stars. And the plot was very intriguing. I really liked some of the side characters. Again, didn't really fall in love with anyone, but I was intrigued enough to continue on with the story and to want to know more and to continue on with the series in general. I do think that the author Marissa Meyer did a great job of like really taking the basis of Cinderella and really creating her own story with it, because it felt familiar the whole time, but it also felt so new and unique as well. There was a cute romance, and this does leave off on a cliffhanger, and so I did already start the second one, which is Scarlet, I believe, which is a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood, but I haven't finished it yet, so it's not going to be in this wrap up. I did tab it, but again, when I don't really connect too much to the characters, I don't really feel like I have much to tab, but I did tab like key points in the novel so that when I reread the series, if I ever have questions, I can kind of just go through my tabs. But I do recommend this series. I think it's great. This is a classic YA series from, I think this came out in like 2012 or something, like early 2010s. And this is a classic. Everyone I know has read it. I'm really the only one. So I've enjoyed it and I will continue on. The next book I read, I was lucky enough to get an ARC of one of my most anticipated releases of next year, and it is Down Comes the Night by Allison Saft. This is a YA gothic romance fantasy novel, and let me just tell you, it was a lot different than I expected, but I still really enjoyed it. So basically we have this fantasy world which just feels a lot like Europe area. I mean, I don't know for sure, but it gives me very much Russian vibes. It was snowy and freezing the whole time, and yeah, so I don't know why, I just think Russian vibes, Russia vibes, I don't know. So basically we have our main character who has a special power to heal, and people from her land and this other land have this magic within them. Not everyone, but certain people, and she has a special power to heal. And a lot of drama is going on. She is the niece of the queen, but the queen is like really evil towards her, and the queen kind of like hated her mother, I believe. So there's just this really weird dynamic between them two. A lot of stuff goes wrong, and one day she gets a letter from this person who lives in this other country to recruit her essentially to heal people from his household, because people from his household keep getting sick, and she's like the best healer in their country and he wants her. So she travels over to this guy's big mansion to go be a healer and heal people. She finds out that the person she's supposed to heal is also her enemy, essentially. And I don't want to give away too many. I mean, you understand. I mean, it literally says in the description on Goodreads that two enemies trapped inside a crumbling mansion with no escape from the monsters within. So, I mean, you do realize, and you already learn kind of who the enemy is earlier on, but to her, in her eyes, he is from this other country and they are warring, and he has killed a lot of her people, so they are instantly already enemies. The romance is a lot cuter and softer and sweeter than I expected. I was thinking like gothic romance, like we're kind of gonna think or worry he's bad the whole time. And I don't know, that's kind of how most of the gothic romances I've read or watched kind of go. You're always like, are they bad? Are they good? I don't know. But it's from the start when you meet him, you kind of realize there's so much more going on and that there's more that we don't know, and he's probably not bad. So it was a lot softer and sweeter, but it was perfect. And I think these two characters were truly perfect for each other. I didn't even tell you what I gave this. I gave this a 4-star. I did jump back and forth between a 3.5 star and a 4-star, but I truly think this deserves a 4-star. It's very unique. It is very great. I really, really hope that more people start writing gothic romances again, because I think that's like one of my favorite genres, and I really need that to be brought again into the literary world. Like YA, yes, but even like new adult or adult with characters in their 20s and stuff like that, kind of target our age group here. So to just critique it and say why it didn't get higher than a 4-star is just, I kind of wish that romance was a little edgier. And I hate nitpicking the romance because I truly do think it was so cute and so sweet and so perfect. But personally, I just love when romances are a little edgier. And then I also think some of the ending wrapped up a little too perfectly, like with a bow on top for me. And I feel like there might have been some unanswered questions. That being said, this is a very, 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 very dense book. And I think if you're not somebody who reads a lot, or if you're on the younger end of YA, like this might be very hard to digest. There were times where I went back and reread paragraphs frequently. And I do think it's worth it to go back and reread the paragraph because, like I said, this is a very dense book with a lot of world building and a lot of atmosphere involved. I think it's worth it to go back and reread those paragraphs. However, it is a very dense book and it's hard to understand at times. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but that's what I kept getting from it. All that being said, I really did love our two main characters, Ren and Hal. I thought they were brilliantly designed and crafted and made, and they came together in a beautiful way. Separately, they were great. Together, they were great. I really liked this story, and I hope you guys will too. And I'm really excited for when it comes out next year, and I will purchase my own copy. Okay, the next two books I read are part of a series that I gobbled up, okay? And that is A Touch of Darkness and A Touch of Ruin by Scarlett St. Clair. Touch of Darkness is the first one, Touch of Ruin is the sequel. As you can see, I tabbed the hell out of these. They were delicious, okay? Let me just tell you. So with A Touch of Darkness, I gave 4.5 stars, and with A Touch of Ruin, I actually haven't rated yet on Goodreads, but I would give it a 4-star, I believe, maybe a 4.5. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. If you don't know anything about this book, it is a Hades and Persephone retelling, but if you've read Lore Olympus, it is extremely similar to that, and not in a bad way. Like, I'm not saying they copied things, I'm just saying like the setting. So we have our main character, Persephone, obviously, and she's a goddess, but no one knows she's a goddess because her mother, Demeter, when she was growing up until like college age, hid her away from the entire world and didn't let her develop her like goddess magic powers, like her, I don't know why I can't think of the right word, but anyway, so she moves out of Olympus and comes down to the city, which I don't even remember what this city is called anymore, but no one knows who she is, and she puts a glamour over her features so she looks like a normal human, and she goes to university and gets her degree. Towards the end of her time at university, she goes out and parties with her best friend and roommate, and they go to Hades Club. And one of the reasons this feels like extremely, I feel like I started to explain this and didn't finish, feels extremely like Lore Olympus, is because this is a very modern world that these Greek gods live in. Like their high-rise buildings. Like this is like urban fantasy kind of, I guess. Anyways, back to my story. She goes to the club that Hades owns, and in this club, Hades is known for having humans and sometimes gods, but mainly humans, come in and make deals with him, and he's known as this bad guy. No one loves Hades. He has this horrible connotation thing about him, and he doesn't change it. He just allows himself to look and seem bad. So they're at Hades' club, they're partying, and she stumbles into the room where Hades does these deals, and she doesn't know what Hades looks like because Hades doesn't allow people to take pictures of him. He doesn't go anywhere where people could take pictures of him, and so she doesn't know what he looks like, and she accidentally makes a deal with Hades. Obviously, I mean, we knew that was gonna happen. Trouble ensues from there because she has to complete her deal with Hades in order to be out of the deal. And obviously they fall in love, and it was just great. I mean, I loved every minute of this. I read this in less than a day because I could not put it down. I had no desire to put it down. I ate it up. I just read it from start to finish. I didn't put the book down. It was so good. I don't think this is like something that is like a literary masterpiece, but as far as like chemistry goes, as far as romance, as far as the smut, it was fantastic. Okay, tabbed it. It was great. I really liked it, and I don't really know if I have much else to say about that. And then the sequel, I obviously can't say too much about without spoiling what happens in the first one, but as you can imagine, it is a romance book. So we do get Hades and Persephone together again in this book, but this book is 10 times more dramatic than the first one, like literally 10 times more dramatic, and I was loving every minute of it. Like, I also read this in less than a day because I had no desire to put it down. I did not want to put it down. I stayed in that bed and I read all day, and it was so good. I loved it. This one ends on way more of a cliffhanger, whereas the first one kind of doesn't end on a cliffhanger. This one ends on a cliffhanger and the next one doesn't come out till April. So I'm kind of like, oh, what am I supposed to do about that? But 10 out of 10 would recommend. If you like the fantasy romance genre, if you like Hades and Persephone retellings, you're gonna love that. The next book I read, or attempted to read, is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is kind of related to Knives Out, and I definitely can see where the relation comes from, but I did DNF this about 50%. Didn't give it a rating because I just wasn't invested. I don't think this is a bad book in any way, shape, or form. I was just kind of in a little bit of a slump throughout this month, and I actually started this mid-October, and I just decided to DNF it a couple days ago. So I literally tried to read it for 5 to 6 weeks, and I couldn't. And it's like a YA book, so I don't know why I couldn't get through it, but I just had no interest in it. But I do think the concept is really cool. There's a guy who dies, and he's a billionaire, and in his will is this random girl. She's never met him, never met this family, but for some reason she's in the will for like all of his money and all of his estate and everything like that. So she goes to Texas, to this other state where this guy died, where his house is and everything, and then there are 4 brothers, and everyone's trying to figure out the whole idea behind it. And I think this is a cool book. I just couldn't get interested in it, that plain and simple. So I don't think it's a bad book. I just don't know if it's for me. I don't know if I'll ever try again. I know quite a few people who really liked this, so it's probably just me. The next book we have is How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This is such a short book. As you can see, this is just a little nugget of a book, but it was everything. I actually, long story short, funny story, to be honest, I had COVID. Really cool stuff. Yeah, I got it, and it kind of hit my entire family at the same time, literally. So we're not sure where it came from, but since we all got it at the same time, we figure somebody got it and brought it into the house, and then we all got it. So I couldn't go out and buy this, so I pre-ordered it on Barnes & Noble. Well, I didn't pre-order. I bought it the day of on Barnes & Noble and had it shipped to my house, but because I have all the other Barnes & Noble editions, the black ones, and I needed this in black too. But I got the EPUB and read the EPUB, and I read it in one day. It was so good. Obviously, it's super short. This has these gorgeous illustrations. Like, let me find some for you. This was 5 out of 5 star, by the way, and it's been a long time since I've read a 5-star book, so it felt like coming home, essentially. I want to find one of these pictures that has Jude and Carden in it, maybe. Oh, here's Jude and Carden. Look at that. The artwork is just so stunning. It's just incredible. Look at that. Anyway, there's tons of artwork in this. So I'm sure you know by now, but this just consists of a bunch of short stories, but let me tell you how brilliant it was. So if you've read the first 2 books in the Witcher series, which maybe not a lot of my viewers have read that because it's not really what I generally talk about since it's adult fantasy, But in the first 2 books of the Witcher series, they are compiled of short stories, and they're kind of like prequels, but they are actually like incredible. Like those are 2 of my favorite books of all time. And they feel like you're reading old school fairy tales, but just way more complex and way more like crafted with way more passion, I guess you could say, than just your average old school fairy tale. There's just way more dynamic and complex, but it feels so familiar and you're so intrigued by it because it is a classic fairy tale. That's what this felt like, even though you're not getting like classic fairy tale retellings in this, because that's not what it is at all. But the feeling and the vibes that Holly Black created in this book are just so freaking incredible. Like this book was incredible. I loved every minute of it. It was perfect. The stories were perfect. Having Carden as the main character was perfect. Also, something that the 2 Witcher books do is that even though they're all different short stories, in the end they all correlate, and there's one big moral that like comes from everything. And that's how this was. For the first couple of stories, you're like, oh, these are great stories, but you don't really know or think, or you just don't really think they're gonna connect. And then at the end, everything comes together in the most glorious way. I highly recommend. It's beautiful, it's stunning. Purchase this because you need this artwork. I tabbed it on my phone since I read it on EPUB, but I haven't gone in and added my tabs to the book, but it's incredible. I loved it. I already want to reread it. I think it's perfect. It makes me want to read the entire series, which I did a year ago leading up to Queen of Nothing, so maybe I should reread it soon. I don't know. And the last and final book, which I literally just finished like 5 minutes before I started filming this, was Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I wanted to love this. I actually haven't even updated my Goodreads yet. That's how recently I finished this. I think I will give this a 3-star or a 3.5 star. I'm not 100% sure. The premise of this is that our main character and her mother and father bought this massive mansion type home in Massachusetts, and they only lived there for 20 days, and she was only 5 years old, so she doesn't remember what happened. And then her father wrote a book on what happened, and that book blew up. It became like a international bestseller, and so everyone knew her as this, like, I can't remember what that book is called in there. House of Horrors. So everyone knew her as the House of Horrors girl, and she hated it. She like despised her father because of it and all of that kind of stuff. 20 years or 20 some odd years later, she inherits this house when her father dies, and she's confused because she's like, I thought my parents sold the house. What is going on? But she does house flipping, so she decides, I'm gonna go to the house, flip the house, kind of figure out what my dad was talking about in the book, sell the house, and be done with it. Well, obviously that doesn't happen. There's obviously a lot of spooky things that go on. There's a paranormal aspect to this book and lots of unanswered questions until the very end. I was disappointed in the ending. I didn't see it coming, so it definitely did like throw me for a loop. Like, I think the twists and turns were well done. I didn't like how the ending kind of like erased other things that happened. Like, I kind of wish the other things, I don't know. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give it away. I don't think this is a bad book, but this took me 6 weeks to get through, and it was on audiobook. That should not have happened. I think because I was enjoying my time while I was reading it, but it felt like a chore to pick up. Does that make sense? So when I plugged in my headphones and I was listening to it, I enjoyed it, but it felt like a chore to get to that point. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't think this is a bad book. I'm just not sure this genre is for me. I think if I want horrors or thrillers, I want ones that have more of a fantastical element or are more historical fiction based, because I don't think I'm interested in contemporary thrillers. I think that might be the problem. That might be why I didn't truly vibe with this. The cover though, stunning. The cover is stunning. Favorite colors. The chandelier is a very big part of the book, so really great stuff here. But yeah, just wasn't exactly for me. Don't think it's bad, just wasn't exactly for me. So now that this video was super long, those are all the books that I read. That was all of October and November. Let's count. I don't even know how many books that was. 11 books, including the DNF at 50%, but I am including that because I did read 50% is a good majority of books, so it's part of my list here. I know that these wrap-ups are titled Massive Wrap-Up Part 1 and 2, and I know to some of you guys, you may be like shaking your head because some people read the amount of books I talk about in this video in a month. Some people read the amount of books I talked about in both videos in 1 month. That's not me. I read like 4 to 6, sometimes if I'm lucky 7 books a month. That feels like a lot to me, and I don't really think anyone should be like perceiving their value based off of the amount of books they read, because obviously that has nothing to do with it. But yeah, that's all I really have to say. That is gonna be it for this video though. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up. And also, if you've read any of these books, if you want to read any of these books, if you have any opinions on this book, drop them down below in the comment section. I love responding to you guys and having conversations with you guys down there. And I am gonna try really hard to be more active on YouTube. I don't really know what kind of content I want to put out, and I think that's why I've kind of strayed away from posting, because I don't even know what to film and post, and I don't want to film and post anything that's not authentic or genuine to who I am or what I want to do. So with all that being said, I love you guys very much. Thank you so much for always watching my videos and tuning in. Thanks so much for watching today. I hope you have a great morning, noon, evening, day, night, whenever happens to be that you're watching this video, and I'm just gonna see you guys in my next one. Bye.